Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of Excuse Me, Doctor. My name is Dr. Melissa Clarke. I am so happy that you're joining us. And, of course, please call me Dr. Mel. We are here every week doing what we do here at Excuse Me, Doctor, making sure that you have the information you need to make wise health decisions. We're streaming on YouTube and Facebook where we're taking your questions live. And of course, if you are newbies to this show, please hit like on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube. And remember to please put those questions in the chat starting now because it's a first come, first serve basis. And we are going to create an amazing week for ourselves with all the health topics we're going to cover today. But before we get into what those are, of course, I have to welcome Miss Lila Mays and Mr. Wayne Bruce, my fabulous co-producers.
Get that last name straight. Get that last name straight, Dr. Bell. I mean, you smart and everything, but come on now.
Well, you know what it was? I was anticipating saying Happy Black History Month, Happy Heart Health Month, and very importantly, Happy Turn-Up Week from Miss Lila Mays.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. It's my birthday, y'all. It's my birthday yesterday.
Yes. And you are 1 year wiser.
I am.
Are you?
I am indeed.
That's good. That's good. You have to be wiser. It
That's
comes
right.
with the territory.
Yes.
Absolutely. So we are so glad that you are here with us and that all three of us here are here to talk tonight. We have a fabulous show with an incredible guest who's going to talk with us about acupuncture. So, it's
I'm
a name.
excited. I'm excited.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a little excited. I'm a little scared too. Anything with needles. Kind of like anything with needles. I'm big and burly and everything. I'm all manly. Till I see
a lot of people feel that way, but acupuncture doesn't really hurt. It's been around for 5,000 years. And just like I talk about in the book, Excuse Me, Doctor, I've got what that I wrote about navigating the healthcare system. I talk about acupuncture in there as well as other alternative therapies. And I talk about what it's best for. So we're going to break that down tonight, but we're going to have this incredible guest, Dr. Dandridge, with us, who's going to walk us through that. So y'all just keep it locked right there because we're going to be getting to that really soon.
Call your friends. Tell them to tune in right now because I got a feeling this is going to be good. And so big scaredy cats like me, will just maybe I can get comfortable with the concept because, I'm down till I see the needle. Like if I got to see the needle,
But you don't even. We're gonna get into all of that because
we're gonna get into it. We're gonna get into it. But you know what we got next, right? What do we have? We have the
weekly recap.
The recap, y'all.
All right.
Let's get into it.
So we always start off with the numbers. And actually, I'm not even going to say the number of COVID cases because it's way wrong. Because people have been testing at home, not testing at all because they don't even have symptoms when they get positive. So I'm just going to talk about the fact, the happy fact, actually, that cases are finally starting to trend down in all 50 states. And just a couple of weeks ago, we were having 800,000 cases a day. But keep in mind, trending down just means trending down. We're still at 300,000 cases a day. So it's still a lot of cases, but we're just heading in the right direction.
That's crazy.
That's a lot of cases. But so, Dr. Mill,
yes,
is there really a difference between the surgical mask and the KN95 mask or the K95 mask in terms of mitigating the spread?
Absolutely, there is. So there was a study that just came out that showed that wearing a mask, a surgical mask, cuts down on spread by 56%. right? And it also
Mhm.
protects you. It protects you. But actually, it turns out that um, KN95 masks actually protect you 83% better, right? So there is
Oh,
a big difference between even surgical masks. Sorry, you know what? I said those numbers wrong. Let me start again. Cloth masks were 56%, surgical masks 66%,
okay.
KN95 and N95 masks 83%. So
Okay.
there's a difference between those, and it's significant. And that's why everybody's saying, hey, look, wear these KN95 and N95 masks, because not only do they protect you from others, they protect you against others,
Right.
which
Wow.
is a different narrative than what was originally. Remember, they used to say, oh, wear your mask because it's protecting you, protecting others from you. But
Mm-hmm.
it's actually
Mhm.
a two-way
Mhm.
street.
Okay.
Wow. That's
Awesome.
cool. Well, look, I just want to know, why do some get severe COVID and others don't? Have they figured that out yet?
Well, there's a lot of research going into that right now. So-called people who are never COVID, and it turns out that people who have evidence of prior immunity from a previous coronavirus, so not SARS-CoV-2, but there were coronaviruses before that that caused a
Mhm.
common cold. So people that had that immunity
Hmm.
seems like they are the ones who don't get sick when exposed to COVID. And then it also turns out that they're looking into why some people get severe COVID, right? So that hyperinflammatory syndrome where their organs start shutting down and all that. And it seems to partially at least be explained by the genes that control our immune system, the HLA genes or what they're called. So some people with a certain gene, HLA-DRB1 1302, a lot of long numbers and names,
Not
but
not
that's
pretty.
that specific gene um, is associated with people who are less likely to have a symptomatic infection. So
Okay.
things are still being figured out, but the picture's getting a little clearer.
Okay.
Interesting. I have an acquaintance who was infected about 4 weeks ago, really, really struggling, now has pleurisy,
Oh,
and
wow.
for a week there was in so much pain, and she was doing steroids, and they had to give her some real some real painkillers, and anti-inflammatory medication. But yeah, it can be so obviously it can be deadly,
Yes,
but
absolutely, and
certainly really,
debilitating.
really ugly and yeah, and
Yeah.
uncomfortable, you know. So
The good
it
news
just
is also too that hospitalizations are going down, and
I was gonna
deaths
say.
still seem to just be around the peak. So we
Mhm.
lost about 6,000 more people over the weekend.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, but vaccinations are still ticking upwards, so that's good.
All right.
That's good.
Facts. Thank you, Dr.
Yeah,
Mel.
that's
Wow. So,
okay.
Dr. Mel, the big game is coming on. We can't even say the name because, if you say the name, you got to pay money. So, the big game is coming up. And, people are trying to get together and they're trying to, enforce the rules of the house, test and or not to test, or, get a PCR test or antigen test. Can you explain that? And when to get
Sure.
which test?
Sure. So even if people are vaccinated, we still know that COVID can be spread. It's less than among unvaccinated people, but it's still there. So if people are thinking about getting together for indoor parties, including the big game party, it's important to ask people to get tested before they show up. So there are two kinds of tests. There's the PCR test, right? You've heard
Right.
about. The thing about the PCR test is it expands upon the genetic material of the virus. So whatever's collected in the swab, the process of the test actually amplifies everything. And so therefore, you can be very early in the infection before any symptoms show up, and the PCR test will be accurate. Um,
Okay.
the thing is, of course, it can take several hours to days to come back. So you got to
Right.
put that into the equation. The antigen test, though, it doesn't expand on things, right? It doesn't amplify the amount of material there, which is why it can be done at home. There are no special processes that are needed, and it only takes
Mhm.
15 minutes, but it's not as accurate. It can miss early cases of COVID, especially if the person has symptoms. So, what do you want to use these two tests for? PCR tests are best used to say, is this person infected? And so you might want to know that if, say, you were exposed to COVID, but you have no symptoms and you want to know, did I test positive? Do I test positive? Or
Mhm.
if you're going to be around somebody for an extended period of time. So, like if you're going to spend the night over some friend's house or stay for 2 or 3 days, you're going to want a PCR test because you want to pick it up, because the antigen test might not pick it up if you're in the early stages, right? And then it might blossom while you're at the person's house and then you infect everybody. Um, Now, the antigen test is good if you have symptoms, right? Because if you have symptoms, that means you have enough virus around for the antigen test to be accurate. Or if you know you're going to go over to a friend's house just for dinner, it's just a couple of hours or whatever, and then you're out, take a antigen test, right before you leave your house or right when you get to their house. And that way, you can socialize a little bit more safely and comfortably and um, confidently, knowing that the risk that you're infectious, even if you're positive and it missed it, but that if you're infectious, it's low.
Okay. All right. So let me get this clear. It's February. It's Love Month. It's Heart Month. We're gonna get into some of that, but just on the Love Month. So PCR, if I'm gonna be kicking it with him for like a little while, not me, because I got mine. But I'm just saying, like if folks gonna go hang out with their people for a little bit, they might want to have a PCR test. If it's a booty call, we can get with the antigen test. That might be a little.
Yeah, if
All
you
right.
wanna
Are
put
you
it like that
serious?
in the context
Yeah.
of Love Month. Hey, man, these
Yeah.
are real practical
This
questions
Love
that
Month.
people have to
Hey, it
Yes.
solve
is
for.
love
That's
month.
a real
So booty
questionnaire.
calls take the
It's
antigen
antigen,
test.
but we're
Pretty
gonna
much.
hang out a little
But if
while.
you're gonna
But
be
it's
spending a whole
PCR.
weekend,
If
you're
you're
gonna
gonna
want a
do the whole
PCR test.
weekend,
Yeah.
Okay.
we just
Yeah,
want.
it's important. All right. Like I said, it's Heart Health Month. And so to kick off Heart Health Month, we're gonna talk about those with the broken heart,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so I just really wanted to recognize the fact, to honor the families of those individuals who've recently committed suicide. That's what I
Yes.
mean by those with a broken heart. So we've heard about a number of high profile individuals in the African American community who've committed suicide. Regina King's son, the former Miss USA, Chelsea
Mhm.
Christ, the Kevin Ward, the 44-year-old mayor of Hyattsville, Maryland, and
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah, and Moses Mosley, who's a 31-year-old actor who was on the
Mm.
series Walking Dead.
Right.
Um, and we know that in the African American community, suicide rates have actually been on the rise over the past 3 years, when overall suicide rates have been trending downward. And the peak for suicides in the African American community is in our young people, whereas in the rest of the United States, it tends to be midlife. Um, and the other thing is we tend to see suicides happen in clusters. It's almost
Mhm.
like if people commit suicides, other people feel like it's just that much more of an impetus
Mhm.
that, yeah, I could go ahead and do that too. And so I wanted to highlight it because I want to just call out some of the symptoms to look for in our loved ones, because sometimes it's not very obvious. And if you do detect it, then you can start a conversation, provide support, and direct people to the help that they need. So talking about feelings of hopelessness or having no reason to live, feeling trapped or in unbearable pain, increasing their use of drugs or alcohol, anxiety, depression, rage, behaving recklessly, sleep. Sleep can be affected too, sleeping too much or too little, or withdrawing and isolating yourself. All these can be sort of the early signs before somebody actually says, I want to die or I want to kill myself,
Mhm.
that loved ones can look for. And there's a really important number to know. That's the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, 1-800-888-5858. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. If you want to hear more, I talked about this on the Russ Parr Morning Show, and he has a podcast about it, Russ Parr Cast. It's called A Much Needed Conversation on Black Male Suicide. It was myself, Iyanla Van Zant, Benny Evans, and Dr. Robert Pruitt. So you can check that out. But yes, very important to honor those individuals who are gone, and especially their families that are left behind.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. So in the same vein of Heart Health Month, is COVID messing with our heart health, Dr. Mel?
COVID has been messing with our heart health for quite some time. So it's not just the direct effects of having had COVID that it puts you at risk for heart inflammation and blood clots. It can cause heart attacks and strokes. It's also the fact that people haven't been going in for their regular checkups, right?
Yeah.
The anxiety and depression has been messing with sleep, which raises your blood pressure. And then we haven't been hugging, right? Because we've been physically distancing, and hugs have been shown to lower blood pressure. In addition, fewer people are getting out and walking. And of course, I don't know if everybody knows this, but there's been an average 29-pound weight gain during the pandemic. So all these things can lead, isn't that crazy? All these things can lead to your arteries getting blocked, your blood pressure getting higher. But the good news is that it's reversible, even if you have a family history. So see your doctor for blood pressure and heart health screenings like you should. Um, you should be getting at least 30 to 45 minutes of movement every day. Not necessarily exercise. Exercise is great. But if you're even just doing housework for 30 to 45 minutes, or gardening, or walking, all these things make a difference. And then last week, if you did not see, 2 weeks ago, if you did not see the show with Dr. Kofi Essel, you should go back and check it out. All about plant-based eating, leaving out those processed meats and foods. All those things are really important for heart health.
All right.
And for our
All right.
SiriusXM family, you can go back and check it out on SiriusXM HUR
141.
Voices. 141
right.
HUR Voices. Okay. So go back and listen to that show. You do know what time it is now, right?
What time is it?
It's my favorite part.
The weekly debunk. Stopping misinformation in its tracks.
So tonight, Tanisha Twitterfinger said, my cousin got COVID over the holidays, but my boyfriend and I didn't because we were smoking weed. You know, weed kills COVID. I saw it on the news.
Huh? I don't know about that. Excuse me, Dr. Mill. Is that true?
Well, you know what? Tanisha is actually up on her facts. It does turn out that there are 3 compounds that were found in hemp plants that prevent the entry of the virus that causes COVID into human cells. That was in a lab, though, right? And it's really important, what Tanisha might not realize is that these compounds that were found in the hemp plants, they are not the same compounds that you get when you smoke weed or eat edibles. So it's really important to not take away the fact that, quote unquote, weed stops COVID, because it doesn't. These are pre-count compounds that need that need to be converted into the active compounds that are found in cannabis. So it's in their pre-stage that actually they are active. So that's really important. The other important thing is this was just found in a lab, right? In an experiment in a petri dish. This is not found in, it has not been replicated in animal studies or in human studies. And so there's still a long way to go before it gets to the stage where they have enough research to present it to the FDA and make medicinals out of it. So it's a little premature, and it definitely is not connected to the compounds that you find when you smoke weed or when you eat edibles. So just wanted to be 100% clear about that.
We need to keep
Sorry,
Tanisha out of.
TT.
We need to keep Tanisha out of the dispensary for right
Sorry,
now.
TT.
All right.
Right.
No.
I mean, she can go. It's just not an effective COVID prevention strategy.
Okay. There
Right.
we go. And that's our time, Blah.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your being here. Now we are going to move into talking about acupuncture. You know, when I was in my 30s, which was a little bit ago, anyway, my dad had Parkinson's disease. And when I realized that there was no way to cure it, I started researching other approaches to health outside of traditional Western medicine, because I wanted to at least see if there was some kind of way to relieve his symptoms. And that was how I came across acupuncture. And I've used it for myself, and I know this might be TMI, but I just want to share it. I stopped having menses at one point in my life for no seeming reason. And I turned to acupuncture at that point, and it totally restored everything back to regularity. And then I started to study acupuncture for myself and was amazed by a whole new understanding of health and wellness. I discuss all this in Excuse Me, Doctor. I've got what? The book. But tonight I have an extremely special guest who's going to walk us through a deeper understanding of acupuncture. Her name is Dr. Tenisha Dandridge. She's an acupuncturist who's been in practice for more than 11 years. She runs the only mobile acupuncture clinic in Sacramento, California. And she's actually done extensive research into using acupuncture and Chinese medicine in the treatment of multi-generational legacies of trauma. We're going to get into that with her. She's the author of The Unusual Tale of Acupuncture, Racism, and African American History in the USA, and a co-founder of blackacupuncturist.com. Welcome, Dr. Dandridge. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. This is such a fascinating topic. Can you just start off by telling us, what is acupuncture?
Acupuncture is one tool in the toolkit of traditional East Asian medicine. It is the insertion of a very fine, very thin filiform needle. That means that the needle is solid and not hollow, like a hypodermic needle. And you insert this very thin, very fine needle into an acupuncture point in order to get the body to elicit healing changes within itself. So that's it in a nutshell.
Excellent. Okay. And so when you're inserting this needle, how do you know where to insert it? I mean, can you just randomly pick a point on the body and do that?
So technically you can, you won't get much benefit out of it. So in order to practice acupuncture in the United States, it requires a minimum of a master's degree. So all of us have a minimum of a 4-year degree, and it is actually one of the heaviest weighted master's degree program in this country. So we have a very extensive education that tells us where needles go, how to find them, and how to combine points in order to get the best chances of bringing the body back into balance.
But why does it make sense to use a needle in these particular points? What's the reasoning behind it?
So there's a lot of long, complicated reasons why this works, and I don't want to lose your listeners and your followers. The short answer is that biomedically speaking, we don't really know. So we know that there's an interaction with fluid dynamics, that is the way that water moves in an organ called the interstitium, or what we call the sanjiao in traditional Chinese medicine. And so that fluid dynamics means that you can create a gradient of electricity that moves along different pathways. You can create hormone changes in the body. You can create you can get muscles to relax. You can get the body to do all sorts of things. It simply depends what you're trying to do. So it's kind of like being in the kitchen. How does food cook? Well, are you frying it? Are you boiling it? Are you grilling it? Are you fermenting it? It all depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
Got it. Got it. So, how did you end up? I think I shared a little bit at the beginning there of how I came to understand, get interested in acupuncture. What was your story? What was your journey to acupuncture?
My story was I had a lot of health problems in my 20s, and due to some medical racism out there in the Baltimore area, not too far from you, I had a medical misdiagnosis. I had food poisoning, but I was misdiagnosed with pelvic inflammatory disease. And that led me to meeting an OBGYN specialist. And Dr. Lee was the first person to ever do any kind of East Asian medicine with me. And he gave me herbs, and it completely corrected the cycle problems that I was having and had been having since the onset of my cycle at 11 years of age, all the way up through my 20s. And he was the first person to listen to me over the course of this medical emergency. So this OBGYN doctor came in, he's just like, that's not your uterus. What's wrong with you? Okay, let's get the right people here to help you. And when you leave the hospital, come see me and I'll fix your cycle because I know that it's really bad. And he did. He fixed my cycle in less than 4 months. I went from having debilitating menstrual cycles to normal. It was the first time I'd had normal menstrual cycles my whole life.
Wow. So we kind of had the opposite problems, but somewhat of a similar journey there. So that's really fascinating. And then I'm assuming that you decided to go ahead and study acupuncture for yourself.
I did. I had someone who helped direct me to a reputable school. At the time, to this day, people don't know a lot about acupuncture and East Asian medicine. It seems like snake oil salesman kind of flu-fluiness. But it is a science. It is something that you have to have degrees in to be able to practice. You can't just grab a pack of needles offline and start pinning yourself. And I went from electrical engineering to acupuncture and East Asian medicine, and my mom like flipped out. She's like, can you be a real doctor? Can you do real medicine? Does it have to be something so quacktastic? And I love what I do, and I love helping people, and I love educating people in this medicine because it is a complete system of medicine. And in the state of California, we're primary care providers, so we treat everything.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about what are some of the things that can be treated with acupuncture. We've hit on a couple of them, but tell us some more.
So acupuncture is good for everything that isn't emergency medicine. If it's cut off, falling apart, suddenly not working, like heart attack, strokes, don't call your acupuncturist. But for anything that's a stable condition, irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's, nausea, constipation, diarrhea, all digestive complaints, anything that's pain, whatever is causing the pain, whatever the etiology, so headaches, migraines, car accidents. I treat people who are in labor because their labor sucks and it either needs to speed up or it hurts really bad and they want to modulate the pain that they're experiencing. I treat internal medicine. So I treat hypertension, I treat diabetes. I have clients who have organ failure and acupuncture is keeping them around. I treat really, there's a specialty of acupuncture for just about anything, including there's a guy who's famous for doing eye acupuncture if you have like a detached retina or glaucoma or something like that. And there are people who specialize in women's health. There are people who specialize in men's health. There are people who specialize in pediatrics. Like there is no limit to this medicine unless it's emergency room medicine. Please go to the emergency room.
Right. Exactly. Thank you for saying that. So I know that you have thought about and researched the idea of acupuncture for multi-generational legacies of trauma. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Sure. So the idea behind multi-generational legacies of trauma is this idea that you can inherit trauma from your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, several generations back. And because of that trauma that those individuals have experienced, the offspring, the children, can have disruptions to their health. They can have disruptions to their body. So this partially goes along with ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experience Study. And it's this idea that either trauma can be introduced in childhood and trauma can be passed through children, where you might have problems with your immune system. You might have more risky behaviors. You might be more prone to autoimmune diseases or metabolic disorders like diabetes, hypertension, or kidney problems. You might be more disposed to things like anxiety, depression, insomnia, different nervous issues. You might have reproductive problems. Like you might have any number of problems simply because there was a small shift in the expression of your DNA, right? And that small shift in the expression of the DNA is trying to gear the body to be able to survive better in a harsh environment, but that harsh environment may or may not exist when that offspring comes about. So when we're looking at the fact that we're inheriting dysfunctions from our parents or grandparents or whoever, we want to be able to bring the body back into balance. We want the body to be able to function in the here and now and not the then and when.
Excellent. And when you say multi-generational, those small shifts in DNA can happen in one generation and then be passed to your offspring. And I think that's the link with the multi-generational.
Yeah, that's
And
the
so
link
you
with the
s-
multi-generational. And that's
right.
important, particularly in Black and Brown communities, because
Exactly.
unfortunately, historically, there is a lot of harm that is done to marginalized communities, especially Black and Brown communities. And the fact that African Americans in particular have never really had an opportunity to recover from this thing that was called chattel slavery that was inflicted upon us. So several hundred years later, and when you throw in things like Jim Crowism, Reconstructionism, the Civil Rights Movement, and the many things that have happened to us in the 400 plus year history that we've been here, we have a lot of things that have been passed along in our DNA.
Right, exactly. And so you're looking at acupuncture to explore how it can help to interrupt and this cycle and bring balance back to the body, I think is what you said,
It,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. Acupuncture and East Asian medicine is all about encouraging the body to express its best health that it can at any given point in time. So if your multi-generational trauma is coming up as an autoimmune disorder or as sugar dysregulation, whether it's too high or too low, people forget that sugar can also be too low. Or if you're having nervous issues or anxiety or depression or just any number of things, we want the body to move into homeostasis. We want the body to move into balance. And acupuncture is hands down the best thing for that.
Wow. And you said that there's actually an interesting history of acupuncture in the African American community. Can you
So
share that with us?
yes, this is my favorite story in the whole wide world. So what we don't know, particularly in our African American community, is that Tupac and acupuncture can be put in a sentence together. So
Tupac
Tupac's
Shakur.
stepfather, Tupac Shakur, the rapper,
Okay.
Tupac
Just want to be
Shakur's
clear.
stepfather, Dr. Matula Shakur, was one of the first acupuncturists here in this country, and he was instrumental in bringing acupuncture to a place called the Lincoln Detox Center in New York, over there on the
Mhm.
East Coast. So back in the 1970s, Dr. Shakur introduced or helped to introduce acupuncture to the Lincoln Detox Center, and they utilized acupuncture to help people detox from heroin, the
Wow.
thing that we still need methadone maintenance for today, right? We still need drug
Yes.
maintenance for methadone. But in the 70s, they were able to get people off of heroin without methadone maintenance, utilizing acupuncture. So they had lines around the corner, they had political education, they had an intersectionality of services. And one of the things that they absolutely used was acupuncture. So
Right.
there's my article, The Unusual Tales of Acupuncture, Activism, and Racism in the United States, talks quite a bit about that. And there's a free movie on YouTube called Dope is Death. It's a free documentary that people can watch, and you can see a lot more about this story. There's also a father out here by the name of Dr. Tolbert Smalls, who is still here and still around. And he was one of the first MDs, first medical doctors. He was a Black man. And he was also the official physician for the Black Panther Party, even though he wasn't a Black Panther member. And he also utilized acupuncture here on the West Coast. He had a variety of free clinics. He had very high profile clients like Angela Davis. And this is the same father who was instrumental in making sure that we had sickle cell testing. So
Mhm.
acupuncture was just one tool in the toolbox of bringing about wellness to our communities. And most of us had no idea. So now that we're in February again, I love telling people that little bit of Black history trivia, that the Black
Right.
Panthers
I love that.
and Dr. Matula Shakur and Dr. Tolbert Smalls were instrumental in popularizing acupuncture in the United States. And unfortunately, Dr. Matula Shakur is still a political prisoner. They will not let him go.
Wow. Well, I thank you for sharing that with us, and I think it's really important how you emphasize that it's a tool in the toolkit. So even within the detox from heroin, and I should say treatment from heroin, that it's one of many different modalities that could be brought to bear. So thank you so much for sharing that. So when somebody comes to visit an acupuncturist, what should they expect?
You should expect to have to fill out a health history questionnaire the same way that you would for any other medical provider. You should wear loose, comfortable clothing. You should go hydrated and with a full belly. And the reason for that is that acupuncture kind of taps into your metabolism. So you will burn through your glucose reserves if you go on an empty stomach. And that's how you'll end up getting up feeling kind of lightheaded or slightly off, because your glucose levels would have plummeted over the course of the treatment. You should expect someone to take a look at your tongue, maybe not quite so much in COVID these days. You should expect someone to feel your pulse on both sides, and then you can expect them to kind of loosely explain what's going on in terms of East Asian medicine. And then there's an application of the needles. The needles, you will have anywhere from 10 to 30. It just kind of depends on your practitioner. Some people don't do more than 10. Some people will throw as many of them in there as the kitchen sink, and however many they need. Typically, you rest with the needles in for 20 to 30 minutes. Again, each practitioner and each style of acupuncture is a little different. Then there's the removal of the needles. Sometimes there's the application of a particular type of heat lamp. It's called a TDP lamp. It does infrared heat. Sometimes there's the burning of an herb over acupuncture points. That's called moxibustion. Sometimes there's cupping, which has become very popular over the course of the Olympics for the last several years. People are familiar with the big purple splotches.
Swimmers, especially.
Marks. Those are not bruises, right? It's just blood coming to the surface because cupping increases circulation. I sell cups on my website. They're star shaped, so they're not so funky looking, because people are like, what's that? Who hit you? Whereas if it's a star, it's cute and it's pretty, right? Yeah. Sometimes there's gua sha, which is scraping along. I hate to say scraping, but that's literally what it's called. It's the rubbing of a beveled, so a smooth edge tool along certain parts. It's great for colds and sicknesses. It's also great for different types of muscle tension. You can potentially get something called Tui Na, or myofascial therapy. Rough translation is massage. I mean, acupuncture and East Asian medicine, it has a lot of tools. You can get herbs, you can get dietary counseling, you can get physical therapy motions that you need to do in order to strengthen a body part. You could get Tai Chi, you could get meditation, you could get breathing techniques. We do a lot of things. So,
right. And all of it, and all of that helps to adjust the energy in your body, essentially.
So it is adjusting the energy in the body, but the idea behind acupuncture is getting a biomedical chemical response, because healing in the body is making sure that the right chemicals or the right hormone signals are going through the body so that the body can have wellness. When we say energy, it has a tendency to sound, again, it sounds a little flu-flu-y, and it sounds a little like quackery, even though I remind people that as a biomechanical machine, we do run off of electricity, a type of energy that is generated from the foods that we eat, right? So that is why nutritional...
And if you go down to our cellular level, all is energy, right? Cells are made up of atoms. Atoms are made up of energy. So, yeah. Wow. And so, you know, a lot of people, you know, you mentioned quackery, etc., but there's also another sort of school of lack of understanding that says, oh, well, you know, that sounds like it's anti-Christian or anti-religion, or it's a different religion. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So acupuncture was something that was developed in East Asian countries. And so they don't have a Judeo-Christian belief set, mindset, tradition in those countries. But acupuncture has nothing to do with religion. Like, this is a science of the body. So it doesn't matter if you're Muslim or Christian or Jewish or Wiccan or Asada or whatever. None of that matters. What matters is that we're working with the mechanics of the body in order to bring about wellness, and it has nothing to do with spirituality.
Great. Well, all this is so fascinating, but I'm going to stop right here and bring in Lila and Wayne again so that we can see if they have any questions from the audience for you, Dr. Dandridge.
Wow, this is
We have been
incredible.
really having a great discussion here.
Incredible show, right? Discussion, Lila.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. We have lots of questions.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I'm scrolling, Wayne, but I saw a question from our girl, Yvonne.
Which one?
Oh, and her
Hi,
question
Yvonne.
was, so this is actually a two-parter. Dr. Dandridge, did you mention a book when you first started talking? If you did, I didn't catch it, and I want to make sure we put it in the chat. It may have been the article you mentioned.
So I did write an
or
article
whatever.
on the history of acupuncture, and that's the unusual tales of acupuncture, activism, and racism in the United States. And you can find that on my website at everyone's-place.com.
Okay.
I mentioned a movie, right, a documentary that is called Dope is Death, and you can find that
Dope
for
is
free on
Death.
YouTube, which is
Okay.
wonderful because for years you could not find this movie. So if you get a chance, as a part of Black history, please take a look at Dope is Death.
Okay, we'll make sure we drop it in the chat. But so here's Yvonne's other parter. What is a certification I need to look for when looking for an acupuncturist?
Excellent question.
So that is a great question, and it's kind of hard to answer. In order to be considered an acupuncturist in the United States, it requires that you have that master's degree, and then there's state licensure that goes along with that. So in theory, anybody that you find is qualified to do it. But what I tell people is you can ask for a 15-minute consult, and you can ask the acupuncturist, or you can email your prospective acupuncturist, and you can find out if they're familiar with your condition. Because there are definitely people who email me or text me and it's like, do you deal with this? It's like, no, as a matter of fact, I don't. But I can refer you to somebody who does deal with whatever that particular issue is. Other questions to consider is this person culturally competent? And that's really important because acupuncture partially works on activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's your rest and your digest nervous system. When your body is in that state, it is significantly more capable of healing and recovery. So if you're going to be triggered or deal with microaggressions, or if you don't want a male practitioner, or whatever your requirements are, it is important to know that about your acupuncturist. And not necessarily all acupuncturists are racially literate. So that might be a question that you might want to ask.
Great question. And maybe that might be a good time to plug your organization, blackacupuncturist.com. Is that right?
So Black Acupuncturist Matters. I am the president and the co-founder of the Black Acupuncturist Association. We got our start in the height of the pandemic because we were all sitting at home and we were like, we need a directory. I got really frustrated with trying to find African-American acupuncturists. So if you go to blackacupuncturist.com or blackacupuncturist.org, you can find a practitioner, an African-American practitioner in your area. You can support us. We gave out 8 scholarships last year to support African-American students going through the acupuncture program, because in the entire country, there's definitely less than 200 Black acupuncturists. There's not that many of us. We are unicorns. Right. So please take a look at that organization. If you find an African-American acupuncturist in your area, by all means, in Black History Month, please support Black businesses.
Okay. And you mentioned master's degrees, also to naturopathic doctors, MDs, and DOs also, and I believe nurse practitioners too, can also study and
it depends on your state.
Yeah, it depends on the state. But I'm just saying it's not just there are other disciplines that are studying acupuncture as well, in addition. So
there are, and then with that, if you're going to find someone who's doing something like dry needling, or if you find someone who is an MD, I think the question of, are you familiar with this particular condition, is very important, because the length of training that goes into being an acupuncturist versus someone who has acupuncture rights and someone who might only take a 3 or 6 month course, our skill levels are very different. Not that anything's wrong with that, it's just that the skill levels are different.
Right. What is the difference between dry needling and acupuncture? Can you tell because some people might not have even heard of dry needling.
So dry needling is cultural appropriation, just flat out. I'm just going to call it what it is, right? Dry needling is where a person who is an MD, a chiropractor, a physical therapist will take an acupuncture needle and insert it into a motor point, typically is what's happening, or they'll do something else to specifically stimulate a muscle fiber. And it's not as balanced a treatment. They're simply trying to trigger the muscle grouping to relax in order to help out with pain. So it's a very, very narrow, very specific set of parameters, and there's nothing wrong with that in any way, fashion, shape, or form. If that's what's near you, then that's what you can by all means do. But that doesn't mean that that person can help you out with your stomach issues or your anxiety or your hypertension. It's a very narrow focus.
Okay.
It's specifically a physical therapy modality for chronic pain in certain muscle groups. Yeah. So just to distinguish between the two.
Okay.
All right.
I have a question from Ellen Claire Lamb. What does imbalance mean?
So when we talk about traditional East Asian medicine, if the body is not performing the way that it's supposed to, we say that there is an imbalance. And what kind of imbalance just kind of depends on what's showing up in the body. So imbalance is our way of saying disease, discomfort, dysfunction.
Okay. Hello?
You have another one, Wayne?
I think we lost Dr. Clarke.
Oh, I'm gonna say I'm still here.
No, we lost.
No, I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I was just going to add the idea of being imbalanced. So we both talked about problems with our cycles, right? So imbalance is the state of everything functioning as it should optimally. And you can have dysfunction in both directions, right? So bringing it back into balance is the idea of bringing it back into the middle where it functions optimally.
Yes, that is the idea of balance. And so anything that's not in balance, again, it's not doing as well as maybe it could. And as you age, things fall apart. That's the natural progression of aging, but you still want to be able to have a high quality of life.
Okay. I have a question from Sandra Beard I'm looking for. Here it is. Will this help with lymphedema?
Yes. So acupuncture and herbs, you'll probably need herbs, can help out with lymphedema, but it's important to understand what's causing the lymphedema, right? And so that's where that health history questionnaire comes in. And that's where it comes into asking your acupuncturist, are you familiar with this? Because your accumulation of water might be due to a kidney problem. It might be due to a heart problem. It might be due to, a backup of fluid in the lungs. It could be that you have a poor diet and that you might need to make better dietary choices, or that you might need to move around. So speaking with your acupuncturist and making sure that they're familiar with your condition in order to get you the best results is important.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people might have lymphedema too if they're breast cancer survivors and they had their lymph nodes removed. That can also lead to lymphedema in the arms. Yeah. So
no, you can have swelling and water accumulation in the body anywhere, right? But you got to make sure that whoever is practicing with you, that they're familiar with whatever is creating your condition so that you can have the best results.
Absolutely.
All right. What you got, Lai?
I have a statement. Cynthia Io Edwards. I've been getting acupuncture for over 25 years, and it's especially my go-to if I'm feeling off, stressed, got the blues, or feel like I'm catching something like a cold, flu, etc. It definitely helps me come back to a clarity of thought to move forward. And I, just before you all respond, if you have a response, I said facts, because I've probably started receiving acupuncture in, I don't know, maybe 2013 for everything, headaches, cramps, all of that stuff. Like, so women, especially our sisters, we have so many issues around fibroids, etc. It was something that I didn't do to solve the problem, but certainly helped with the symptoms. So I am a huge
Absolutely.
proponent of acupuncture.
So to speak to that, again, when we're focusing on marginalized communities like African American communities
Sure.
and other communities that are disproportionately affected by systemic issues in this country, what you need to keep in mind is that racial battle fatigue is a thing. This idea of always having to work twice as hard to get half as far. This idea that we're constantly dealing with these microaggressions, these little insults, these little things that are constantly thrown at you over the course of the day, whether it's at on the TV or in media or your work environment or going to the store. Like, we deal with a lot of these stressors, and it's very easy to say, oh, that's not bothering me. Just brush your shoulder off. That out of sight, out of mind. Sticks and stones, words can never hurt you. But that's not actually how it works, right? The idea of feeling discriminated against, this idea of feeling othered, the idea of having to burn your candle at both ends, this does create stress in the body. And we unfortunately have this tendency for this toxic positivity of just smile and it'll be better. No, actually it won't, because your body produces stress hormones. And so it doesn't get better. There's a change to kidney function. There's a change to your blood pressure. There's a change to the way that your body is incapable of digesting food. It no longer wants to balance out the immune system. Like it's a really long list called I'm stressed. And if you're constantly feeling this way and you never get any respite from it, then the body can never go back into balance. The body can never go back into homeostasis. And that is what makes acupuncture beautiful, because it can always bring you back towards that balance. Whereas if you can't calm down because you're doing your yoga or you're doing your Tai Chi or you're trying to press on your acupressure points or you're trying to do aromatherapy, like there's a lot of wellness out there and they all have merit. But acupuncture is unique in its routine capacity of being able to flip that light switch and bring you back down into rest and digest. That is imperative for marginalized communities in particular, because nothing works like acupuncture in that terms. And so even if I can't fix whatever you're experiencing out there in the rest of the world, I can at least give you a firm reset before you have to go back out there and face it again.
Wow. Well
All right.
said. Well said.
So I have another question, and this one is an important question. It's actually, but this one is important from an important person, and I got to get this on because she writes. Nicole E. Clarke writes, Auntie Melissa, I've been diagnosed with primary progressive multiple sclerosis, and right now my right leg is giving me issues, resulting in my no longer being able to be driving, along with the physio chiro does my acupuncture. Is there anything else that you recommend? And I'm sorry I messed that up, Nicole E. Clarke. I can't read right now. I'm sorry.
Well, Nicole, thank you so much for tuning in. This is my niece, and I'm really happy to see that you put a comment there. I would be happy to talk to you offline, but I would love for Dr. Dandridge to comment and just mention if she has treated individuals with multiple sclerosis.
So me personally, I don't see that many multiple sclerosis patients in my practice, but acupuncture and East Asian medicine is really great for that. This is where seeing a fully licensed acupuncturist who can do more of the comorbidities that are happening in the body, more of dealing with more of the body holistically and in its totality, as opposed to just the pain that you're dealing with. I think that you could get some additional benefits or increased in benefits from seeing an acupuncturist and an herbalist. So acupuncture is great for MS and autoimmune disorders. It's wonderful for autoimmune disorders, but you're not going to get that from a chiro.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I want to really emphasize one thing that we haven't brought out, and that's the number of treatments that you should be thinking about with acupuncture. Is it just like taking a Tylenol? You take a Tylenol, boom, your headache goes,
Right.
or talk to us about that, because that's a really important point to bring out.
Sweet. So acupuncture is something that is disease specific. And what I mean by that is if you just sprained your ankle, you just did it last night, you'll have maybe 4 to 6 treatments. And this is also dependent on your age and your general health, right? But 4 to 6 treatments after you sprained your ankle, and you'll be right as rain. But if you're talking about something that you've dealt with for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, now we're talking about something that is a little bit more rooted in, and you should expect your treatments to go on significantly longer. And you should expect the frequency to be like as much as 2 to 3 times a week. And usually every 6 to 12 treatments, you kind of reevaluate what your body's responding to and what it's not responding to. So acupuncture is not a magic bullet. You don't have one treatment and then you're done, right? It's not a surgery. Right. It is something that you do repeatedly, like brushing your teeth or getting your lashes done or getting your hair cut. It is body maintenance. And there are a million things that pull the body off center. And there's not a lot of things that necessarily pull the body back into center, back into balance. So you're going to need a lot of treatment depending on how bad your condition is and how long you've had your condition. So in my practice in particular, I have a tendency to have long-term clients. I am a mobile acupuncturist, so most people who see me have debilitating conditions that's preventing them from getting out of the house. I've had some clients for 5 years. Like I will have them for the rest of their lives, right? Because their condition is never going to go away, or they're very old, and this is end of life care. But again, it depends on how severe the condition is, how old you are, right? I don't know about you, but I'm of that age, because my birthday's next week too. Happy birthday, by the way. I'm of that age where I sneeze.
Aquarius in the house.
Aquarius is in the house, right? I sneeze and I sprain a toe. I don't know what happened. So that's a quick treatment, right? But as I'm getting older and my digestion doesn't work as well, it's something that I more stringently work on. Or I'm about to be 44, so I'm starting to go through the change. I'm going to treat my menopausal condition until I'm fully menopausal.
You're a young one. But thank you so much. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up now. I am so grateful for this wonderful conversation with Dr. Dandridge. And of course, thank you so much to my co-producers, Miss Lila Mays and Mr. Wayne Bruce. And as always, before I go, I want to just remind everybody about a special research study at Howard University that they've asked me to invite people who listen to this show to participate in. It's a COVID resilience research study. Participation is voluntary. You fill out a 2-part survey. You can be compensated for up to $100, depending on which parts you complete. And if you're interested, please contact my assistant, Dana Harvey, at danaharveyresearch@gmail.com. That's Dana, D-A-N-A, Harvey, H-A-R, V-E-Y, research@gmail.com, or call 470-795-0329, 470-795-0329. So that is it for us this week, y'all. Remember to check out that Russ Parr podcast. And you can also catch me on the Russ Parr Morning Show next Monday. And if you don't see me between now and then, remember, you can always catch us here next week. And in the interim, please remember, be wise, be well, and be health empowered. Thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you to my audience. You guys are great.
My name is Dion Davis. I've tried to live my life with no regrets, but I guess my final regret is not getting vaccinated. Please, don't let not getting vaxxed be your final regret.